My father gave my $70,000 to my brother the same day I transferred it to help with their retirement. I had spent 5 years saving that money, 5 years of overtime shifts, skipped vacations, second-hand clothes, and careful budgeting. 5 years of watching my friends buy houses and take trips while I put every extra dollar into a savings account labeled Mom and Dad Retirement. I was 28 years old and I had finally done it. $70,000. Enough for a down payment on a nice retirement condo in Florida, the one my parents had been dreaming about since I was a child. Every summer, we would drive down to visit my grandmother in Tampa, and my mother would point at the waterfront properties and say, "Someday, when your father retires, that's where we'll live." Someday had finally arrived. I transferred the money on a Tuesday morning, $70,000 from my savings account to my parents' joint account. I didn't tell them I was doing it. I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to see their faces when they checked their balance and realized their daughter had made their dream possible. I drove to their house that evening, practically vibrating with excitement. My mother opened the door. "Vivienne, what a surprise. Come in, come in. Is Dad here? I have something to tell you both. He's in the study with your brother. They're discussing business." My brother, Derek, the golden child, the firstborn son, the heir to absolutely nothing but somehow treated like royalty his entire life. Derek was 32 and had never held a job for more than 18 months. He had bounced from scheme to scheme, a food truck that failed, a cryptocurrency venture that collapsed, a consulting firm that never had any clients. Each failure was funded by our parents, who emptied their savings again and again to support his entrepreneurial spirit. Now he was starting yet another company, a tech startup, he called it, something about an app. I hadn't paid much attention because I had stopped believing in Derek's dreams years ago. I walked to the study, my excitement dimming slightly at the knowledge that Derek was there. The door was open. I heard my father's voice before I saw him. "And with this investment, you'll have enough runway to hire a real development team. This is it, son. I can feel it. This is the one that's going to make you a success." "Thanks, Dad. I won't let you down this time." I stepped into the doorway. My father was sitting behind his desk, his checkbook open in front of him. Derek was standing across from him, holding a piece of paper, a check for $70,000, my $70,000. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already knew. The sick feeling in my stomach told me everything I needed to know. "Vivienne." My father smiled, oblivious to the bomb he was about to detonate. "Perfect timing. I was just telling your brother about this incredible surprise we got today. Someone transferred $70,000 into our account. We thought it was a bank error at first, but it turns out it was real. I know it was real." My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "I transferred it." "You?" My father blinked. "Why would you?" "For your retirement. For the condo in Florida. I've been saving for 5 years to help you and Mom buy your dream home." Silence. My father looked at the check in Derek's hand. Derek looked at me, and I watched as the realization dawned and then immediately got rationalized away. "Well," my father said slowly, "that's very thoughtful of you, sweetheart, but your brother needs this money for his company. It's an investment in his future, in the family's future." "An investment? You just gave away my savings." "We didn't give away anything. This is our money now. You transferred it to us, which means it's ours to do with as we please." He stood up, straightening his jacket like the conversation was over. "And we've decided to invest in Derek's startup. It's the smart move." "The smart move?" I was shaking now. "Dad, I saved that money for 5 years. 5 years of working 2 jobs, 5 years of sacrifice. And you're giving it to Derek? For another startup that's going to fail just like all the others?" "This one is different," Derek started. "Shut up, Derek." "Vivienne." My mother appeared in the doorway, her voice sharp. "Don't speak to your brother that way. He's getting $70,000 that I saved for your retirement. I think I've earned the right to be upset." "That money was a gift," my mother said, crossing her arms. "You can't dictate what we do with a gift." "It wasn't a gift to Derek. It was for you and Dad, for your future. Our future is tied to our children's success." My mother's voice softened, but not in a kind way. in the condescending way she always used when she thought she was teaching me something obvious. Derek is building something, a legacy. That money will come back to us tenfold when his company succeeds. And what about my legacy? What about what I'm building? My mother laughed, actually laughed. Vivian, darling, boys build legacies. Girls just spend. She patted my cheek like I was a child who had said something cute, but fundamentally stupid. That's the way it's always been. That's why we invest in Derek. He's going to carry the family name forward. You're going to get married and take someone else's name and spend your husband's money just like every other woman. I stared at her, at this woman who had raised me, at this woman who had told me my entire life that I could be anything I wanted, at this woman who had just revealed what she truly believed about my worth. Boys build legacies, I repeated slowly. Girls just spend. Don't take it personally, sweetheart. It's just biology. It's just the way things are. I looked at my father, hoping, praying that he would object, that he would tell my mother she was wrong, that he would recognize the years of sacrifice I had made for them. He didn't meet my eyes. Your mother has a point, he mumbled. Derek needs this more than we do. You understand, don't you? You've always been the responsible one. You'll be fine. I'll be fine. Because I'm the responsible one. Because I'm expected to sacrifice and save and give, while Derek is expected to dream and fail and receive. Because girls just spend, and boys build legacies. I walked out of that house without another word. I got in my car, I drove to my apartment, and I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to build something, not for my family, for myself. And in 3 years, they would understand exactly what they had thrown away. My name is Vivian Okafor. I am 34 years old. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to David and Patricia Okafor, though those names mean less to me now than they once did. My parents were immigrants from Nigeria who had built a comfortable middle-class life through decades of hard work. They had sacrificed everything to give their children opportunities, and I had spent my entire life trying to live up to that sacrifice. But there was always an asterisk next to my achievements. I graduated valedictorian of my high school class. Derek graduated with a C average. They threw him a bigger party. I got a full scholarship to Carnegie Mellon. Derek got into a state school that my parents had to pay for. They talked about his college experience more than mine. I graduated with honors and got a job at a Fortune 500 company. Derek dropped out after 3 years to pursue his passion. They called him brave and entrepreneurial. I climbed the corporate ladder, earning promotions and raises through sheer determination. Derek failed at business after business, each time coming home with his hand out. They called me stable and responsible. They called him visionary. I saved $70,000 for their retirement. They gave it to him, because boys build legacies, and girls just spend. Let me tell you about the 3 years of silence. After I walked out of my parents' house that night, I didn't call them. I didn't text them. I didn't respond to their occasional messages or their invitations to family dinners. I disappeared. Not physically. I still lived in Pittsburgh, still worked at my job, still existed in all the ways that mattered, but I removed myself from their lives completely. My mother tried at first, texts asking where I was, calls that went to voicemail, an email wondering why I was being so dramatic about a simple family decision. I ignored all of it. Eventually, she stopped trying. Your daughter is being ridiculous, I'm sure she told my father. She'll come around when she calms down. I didn't come around. I got to work. The day after the confrontation, I requested a meeting with my supervisor. I told her I wanted to be put on the fast track for promotion. I wanted more responsibilities. I wanted to prove what I was capable of. She looked at me for a long moment. You've always been one of our best performers, she said. But you've also been cautious, holding back. What changed? I stopped believing that someone else would take care of my future, I said. I'm done waiting. I'm done being responsible and stable while other people take risks. I want to build something. She smiled. Then let's build something. Within 6 months, I was promoted to senior analyst. Within a year, I was managing a team. Within 2 years, I was director of strategic investments. But that wasn't enough. I had bigger plans. The investment world had taught me something valuable. Money makes money. The people who got rich weren't the ones who saved carefully and hoped for the best. They were the ones who identified opportunities, took calculated risks, and made their capital work for them. I started studying. Every night after work, I read about venture capital, private equity, angel investing. I analyzed what made startups succeed or fail. I built models, tracked trends, learned to spot the patterns that separated winners from losers. And I started investing. Small amounts at first, $5,000 here, $10,000 there. Enough to hurt if I lost it, but not enough to destroy me. I chose carefully. I looked for companies with strong fundamentals, competent teams, and markets ready for disruption. I avoided the flashy pitches and focused on sustainable business models. Some investments failed, but more succeeded. Within 2 years, my investment portfolio had grown from $50,000 to $400,000. I was learning. I was growing. I was building something. And I was doing it without my family. Derek's startup was called Nexus Technologies. I know this because, despite cutting my family off, I kept tabs on my brother. Not out of love, out of curiosity. I wanted to see if this time would be different, if the $70,000 he had taken from me would actually amount to something. For the first 2 years, it looked like more of the same. Nexus Technologies pivoted 3 times, burning through Derek's initial funding and requiring additional investments from my parents. Their retirement savings, the money they had been building for decades, went into Derek's company piece by piece until there was nothing left. My father took a reverse mortgage on their house. My mother went back to work part-time, all to fund Derek's dream. I watched from a distance, feeling a complicated mix of vindication and sadness. Vindication that my assessment of Derek had been correct. Sadness that my parents were destroying themselves for someone who would never deliver on his promises. But then something unexpected happened. In the 3rd year, Derek finally did something right. He hired a competent CTO, a woman named Sarah Chen who had actually built and sold a company before. She looked at Nexus Technologies, threw out everything Derek had created, and built something new from the ground up. Within 6 months, Nexus had a working product. Within a year, they had real customers. Within 18 months, they were generating revenue. Derek, of course, took all the credit. In interviews, he talked about his vision and his persistence and his willingness to pivot when the market demanded it. He never mentioned Sarah. He never mentioned that his success was built on other people's competence. But success was success. And when the news broke that Nexus Technologies was preparing for an IPO, I knew my opportunity had arrived. The IPO announcement came in February. Nexus Technologies was going public with an estimated valuation of $400 million. Derek, as founder and CEO, owned 15% of the company, meaning he was about to become worth $60 million on paper. My parents were ecstatic. "We always believed in him," my mother said in an interview with a local news station. "When everyone else doubted, we knew our son would prove them wrong." When everyone else doubted, she meant me. I was the one who had doubted. I was the one who had been right about every single one of Derek's previous failures. And now I was. The one being erased from the narrative, replaced by a story of unwavering family support. I watched the interview in my office, feeling something cold settle in my chest. They were going to pretend I didn't exist. They were going to rewrite history to make themselves heroes. They were going to forget that they had stolen $70,000 from me and used it to fund a dream that only succeeded because someone else came in and did the actual work. Fine. If they wanted to forget me, I would give them something to remember. The investment had been made 6 months before the IPO announcement. This is important to understand. I didn't invest in Nexus Technologies to help Derek. I invested because Sarah Chen reached out to me. We had met at a Women in Technology conference 2 years earlier when I was still building my investment portfolio, and she was still working at her previous company. We had stayed in touch, occasionally grabbing coffee, sharing advice, supporting each other's careers. When Sarah joined Nexus, she called me. "I know this is awkward," she said. "I know he's your brother, but this company has real potential now that I'm rebuilding it, and I'm looking for investors who believe in me, not in the founder's story. Tell me about the technology." She did. It was good. Better than good. It was the kind of innovation that could genuinely disrupt a market. "How much are you raising?" "We're doing a Series B round, $15 million total. We need strategic investors who understand the industry." "How much do you need from me?" Whatever you're comfortable with. Even $100,000 would help. I thought about it. $100,000 was substantial. It was a quarter of my investment portfolio at the time. If the company failed, I would lose a significant portion of my wealth. But I trusted Sarah. And if I'm being honest, there was a part of me that wanted to be involved in Derek's success without him knowing. A part that wanted to prove that I could build a legacy too, not by starting a company, but by recognizing one that others had overlooked. "I'll give you $250,000, I said, "but I have conditions." "Name them." "My investment stays anonymous. No one at the company, especially Derek, can know that I'm involved. The shares are held through a holding company that can't be traced back to me. Why the secrecy? Because I want to see how this plays out, and because I don't want my brother to think I'm doing him any favors." Sarah agreed. The investment was made, and for 2 years I watched from the shadows as Nexus Technologies grew from a struggling startup into a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The IPO happened on a Wednesday in March. Nexus Technologies opened at $24 per share and closed at $31, giving the company a market cap of $520 million, significantly higher than the pre-IPO estimates. Derek was everywhere, on CNBC talking about his journey, on Forbes profiled as an emerging tech titan, on social media, where people I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanted to reconnect now that they knew someone famous. He was the success story, the visionary who had persisted through failure, the boy who had built a legacy. I watched it all with quiet satisfaction, because I knew something no one else knew. My $250,000 investment, made at the Series B valuation, was now worth approximately $12 million. I had turned my money that could have been part of the $70,000 my parents stole from me, into a fortune that dwarfed what they had given Derek. But that wasn't the best part. The best part came 3 weeks after the IPO. SEC regulations require public companies to disclose certain information about their investors. Not all investors. Many are hidden behind institutional vehicles, but certain major shareholders have to be named. I had structured my investment carefully. Most of my shares were held through anonymous vehicles that wouldn't trigger disclosure requirements, but I had made sure that a small portion, just enough to be noticeable, was held in my own name. Vivienne Okafor, listed among the investors who had believed in Nexus Technologies before it was successful, listed among the people who had built Derek's legacy. The investor list was released on a Friday. I got a phone call from my mother that evening. I didn't answer. She called again, and again, and again. Then my father called. Then Derek called. I let them all go to voicemail. Finally, around 11 p.m., I got a text from my mother. "Vivian, please call us. Your father saw your name on Derek's investor list. He can't breathe. Please." I read the message. Then I turned off my phone, and I went to bed. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. Not because they asked, because I was ready. I had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. 3 years of silence, of building, of proving that girls don't just spend. They invest, they grow, they create wealth that dwarfs anything their brothers could dream of. I had earned this confrontation. I was going to enjoy it. My mother opened the door before I could knock. She looked older than I remembered, grayer. The 3 years of funding Derek's dreams had taken their toll. "Vivian," her voice was trembling, "you came. You said Dad couldn't breathe. I wanted to make sure he was still alive to hear what I have to say." I walked past her into the house. My father was sitting in the living room, a printed copy of the investor list in his hands. Derek was pacing by the window, his face a mask of confusion and something that looked like fear. "Vivienne," my father said, looking up, "I don't understand. How is your name on this list?" "Because I'm an investor." I sat down in the chair across from him, crossing my legs. I invested $250,000 in Nexus Technologies during their Series B round 2 years ago. "But how? Where did you get that kind of money?" "I earned it. The same way I earned the $70,000 you gave to Derek 3 years ago, through hard work, sacrifice, and careful planning." "You had $250,000? My mother's voice was incredulous. "And you didn't help us when we were struggling?" "You weren't struggling. You were choosing to pour your savings into Derek's company instead of your retirement. That's not the same thing. We believed in him. You believed in him because he's a boy, and boys build legacies. I smiled coldly. Isn't that what you told me? Girls just spend. We don't build anything. My mother's face went pale. I didn't mean... You meant every word, and you know what? You were right. I did spend. I spent $250,000 on an investment that is now worth $12 million. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. 12 million? My father whispered. Give or take, depending on the stock price. I've been selling off small portions as the lockup periods expire, diversifying into other investments. By the end of the year, I'll have liquidated most of my position. But that's more than, Derek started. More than your stake is worth after taxes and dilution? Yes, significantly more. I turned to look at my brother. You own 15% of a $520 million company. That sounds impressive until you realize that after all the preference shares, liquidation preferences, and investor protections are calculated, your actual take is closer to $35 million. And after California taxes, you'll be lucky to keep $20 million of that. Derek's face went red. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm a director of strategic investments at one of the largest financial services companies in the country. I analyze deals like yours for a living. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I stood up. Here's what's going to happen. I'm not going to ask for the $70,000 back. It's been 3 years, and honestly, I've made so much money that $70,000 doesn't matter anymore. Then why are you here? My mother asked. Because I want you to understand something. I walked to the window, looking out at the street where I had grown up, the house that held so many memories, some good, mostly complicated. I spent my entire life trying to earn your approval. I got good grades. I got scholarships. I built a career. I saved $70,000 to buy you your dream retirement home. And none of it mattered because I was born a girl. I turned to face them. Derek failed at everything he touched for a decade. He burned through your savings, mortgaged your house, took my money without a second thought, and you worshipped him anyway because he was born a boy. That's not fair, my father started. Fair? I laughed. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been treating your children equally. Fair would have been recognizing my sacrifices instead of dismissing them. Fair would have been asking me before giving my money to someone else. I picked up my purse. But here's the thing. I don't need fair anymore. I don't need your approval. I don't need you to recognize my achievements or validate my choices. I've built something on my own, something bigger than anything Derek has created, something that proves everything you believed about girls and boys and legacies was wrong. Vivian, please. My mother's voice broke. We made mistakes. We can make it right. No, you can't. Some things can't be made right. Some words can't be taken back. Boys build legacies. Girls just spend. I'll remember that for the rest of my life. I walked to the door. Vivienne, my father called. Wait, please. Let us be part of your success. You're our daughter. We're proud of you. You're proud of me now because I have $12 million. But 3 years ago, when all I had was $70,000 and 5 years of sacrifice, you gave it to Derek without a second thought. I opened the door. The difference between me and Derek is that I don't need your money to build something. I never did. I just needed you to believe in me the way you believed in him. I looked at my mother one last time. Boys build legacies. Girls just spend. That's what you said. Well, Mom, I just spent my way into a $12 million fortune. I guess that makes me pretty good at spending. I walked out. I got in my car, a Tesla Model S I had bought with the proceeds from my first major investment win, and I drove away from my childhood home knowing I would never look back. The reconciliation attempt started the next day. My mother called, crying, begging for a chance to make things right. My father sent long emails explaining the cultural pressures that had shaped his views, promising to do better. Derek sent a text that simply said, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't respond to any of them, not because I was cruel, But because I had learned something important in those 3 years of silence, some relationships can't be repaired. Some wounds run too deep. Some words, once spoken, change everything. Boys build legacies. Girls just spend. My mother had revealed what she truly believed about me, about my worth, about my place in the family. No amount of apologizing could undo that revelation. But I also learned something else. I learned that I didn't need their approval to build a life worth living. I learned that my worth wasn't determined by their opinion of me. I learned that the best revenge isn't about making them suffer. It's about making yourself so successful that their opinion becomes irrelevant. 2 years after that final confrontation, I founded my own investment firm, Okafor Capital. We specialize in funding women-led startups, companies founded or co-founded by women who have been overlooked by traditional venture capital. Our first fund was $50 million. Our second fund was $150 million. Our third fund, which we closed last year, was $400 million. We've invested in 47 companies, creating thousands of jobs, generating billions in economic value, and proving that women don't just spend. We build, we grow, we create legacies that change the world. Every time I sign a check to a female founder, I think about my mother's words. Boys build legacies. Girls just spend. And I smile, because I've spent my way into an empire, and the legacy I'm building will outlast anything my brother ever creates. Sarah Chen called me last month. She left Nexus Technologies 2 years ago after Derek pushed her out to consolidate his control over the company. She took her shares, worth about $15 million, and started her own venture. "I'm raising a seed round," she said, "and I want you to be my first investor. Tell me about it." She did. It was brilliant, better than Nexus had ever been. "How much do you need?" $5 million to start. "I'll give you $10 million, and I want a board seat." Done. "And Sarah? This time, make sure your name is on the company, not some man who's going to take credit for your work." She laughed. "Trust me, I learned that lesson." We signed the papers last week. Her company is called Legacy Ventures. I thought the name was perfect. I haven't spoken to my parents in 4 years. I've heard things, though, through mutual friends, through the news, through the inevitable gossip that follows families like ours. Derek's company has struggled since the IPO. The stock price has fallen 60% from its peak. There are rumors of accounting irregularities, of a toxic workplace culture, of a CEO who takes credit for everything and blame for nothing. My parents lost most of their gains. They had borrowed against their shares, expecting the price to keep rising. When it crashed, they were left with debt instead of wealth. Their retirement, the retirement I had tried to fund with $70,000 of my savings, is now uncertain. Part of me feels sorry for them, but a larger part remembers the look on my mother's face when she said, "Boys build legacies. Girls just spend." She wasn't joking. She wasn't being hyperbolic. She genuinely believed that my brother was more valuable than me simply because of his gender, and she built her entire financial future on that belief. Now she's paying the price. Just like I paid the price all those years ago for being born a girl. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it. Like and subscribe for more stories about determination, success, and the legacies we build for ourselves. Boys build legacies. Girls just spend. That's what my mother said when my father gave my $70,000 to my brother. I had saved that money for 5 years, for their retirement, for their dream home, and they gave it to Derek for another startup, because he was a boy, because boys build legacies, because girls just spend. I went silent for 3 years. I built my own fortune. I invested in Derek's company without anyone knowing, and when the investor list was released, my name was on it. Vivienne Okafor. $250,000 invested, $12 million in returns. My father couldn't breathe when he saw it. My mother sat on the floor and cried, not because they were proud of me, because they finally understood what they had lost. A daughter who could build legacies, a daughter who didn't just spend, she invested. A daughter worth more than everything they had given Derek. Boys build legacies. Girls just spend. No, Mom. Girls build empires, and we don't need your permission to do it.